Good afternoon. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you I think I know nearly everybody in the room, but for family members of our honorees, I am A.C. Roche, and I have the best job in the world because I'm president of the Cranbrook educational community, and I have the great privilege of having gotten to know each of our 4 honorees today, and I am just thrilled to be hosting and emceeing today's gathering. It does make palpable, this room, the passion that extends throughout this campus. And for so many of us who've witnessed this event in the past, we think of it as our favorite, because today we celebrate dedication that so many of you have and the impact each one of the members of this community are making here. We also celebrate today clear examples of excellence. Excellence as service to a community focused on education where we welcome and honor one another with all of our diverse backgrounds, areas of expertise, affinities, identities, and wide-ranging life experiences. Excellence as deep and abiding commitment to not only preserving, but also sharing with others our historic campus and architecture, celebrating Cranbrook's global impact in art and design and in all manner of educational exploration. Excellence as a willingness to offer innovative ideas that elevate the contemporary Cranbrook experience for learners of all ages. I want to thank you again for joining us here today. Before we begin the formal part, I want to recognize the Cranbrook Quartet from Cranbrook Schools. Ketan Swami on violin, Elena Serna on violin, Grant Sobota on viola, and Ryan Lee on cello. Thank you. Thank you. Now, as I make introductory comments, please continue. The food is amazing, and we want to make sure you have as much as you want. Don't be shy. This is the 35th year that we are gathering to celebrate this award for excellence. And congratulations to each of the honorees being recognized as outstanding members of our community. It is a privilege and an honor to celebrate you, and I am incredibly grateful to be a part of this ceremony for the 3rd time for me as Cranbrook's 9th president. For each of the presidents that have come before me, this event has indeed been just as special. Today, we have my predecessor, President Emeritus Dom DeMarco, in the house. Dom served Cranbrook as both COO and president from 2012 to 2021. I know that for Dom, selecting the recipients of this award, while very gratifying, was also one of the single most difficult decisions he had to make. I am in complete agreement. That, my friend, has not changed. And the same was true for President Emerita Dr. Lillian Boiter, who served as president from 1984 until 1996. Additionally, without Dr. Bauder and her vision, all of this would not be possible. In 1989, Lillian established the President's Award for Excellence. Later, she and her husband, Don, created an endowment to support this event and ensure that Cranbrook could continue to recognize and celebrate excellence within our community. Lillian reflects, "Those of you who were here during my tenure know that I spoke often of the importance at Cranbrook of people, program, and place. For me, the greatest of these clearly was people, the essence of Cranbrook's soul." As Lillian envisioned, this event honors the very soul of our community, excellence in its many, many forms, and from its very first year has recognized exceptional individuals from every corner of this magical and majestic campus. Educators, curators, artists, tradesmen and women, staff members, volunteers, and governance leaders. Each year, we videotape this event and share a copy with Lillian. And I would like to ask everyone to look at the front right of the room and face, someone help me here, the video gentleman. He's up above, there we go. Fabulous. Please give a wave. Lillian is still very much a part of Cranbrook's soul. She is a trusted advisor to me, and we are grateful for all that she and Don have done and that she continues to do for our community. Lillian, I thank you for all of that. Know that to memorialize each honoree for their lasting contribution to Cranbrook, we inscribe the honoree's initials on the legs of a bench. At the time of the award's inception, Gary Griffin, artist in residence and head of metal smithing from Cranbrook Academy of Art, designed and fabricated the legs of the original benches. We continue with his design today. The bench honoring last year's recipients will be placed on the northern corner of the intersection of Academy Way and Institute Way, overlooking Jonah Fountain. The bench for this year's honorees is on display in the lobby today and will be placed close to the trellis bridge at Tamarack Way by the river across from the middle school for girls. As I said, this year marks the 35th class of award recipients. All have been nominated by their peers. And every year, the list of candidates for this award grows and grows. Last April, we celebrated colleagues who are in the room. Please stand. Kevin Adkison, Al Beeman, Brenda Gatlin, and Julie Montgomery. Thus far, 146 individuals have received the President's Award since its inception and have been commemorated with their own special place on this campus. There are, I understand, 35 award recipients in attendance today, and I ask you to stand as past honorees. To those being honored today, my goodness, what company you now keep. When we consider what makes Cranbrook unique, We have over, at this time, 930 full and part-time employees, many of whom have been with Cranbrook for decades, 20, 30, 40, 45 years. Today also happens to be Administrative Professionals Day. Please, I ask those of you who fill that role to stand as we honor you. I love it when those two events happen together. I also want to take a moment, particularly today, to recognize two colleagues who are close to our hearts when we think of Cranbrook's soul. The late Superintendent of Maintenance, John Malowitz, and the late Director of Operations, Calvin Vincent. As much as the loss of each in the last 18 months has brought great sadness to our community, so have we been called in their memory to greater community, a deeper care for each other by our memory of John and our memory of Calvin, and by their shared love of this special place. Calvin and John spent the bulk of their 2 short professional lives at Cranbrook, and each, in his own way, made an indelible mark on our community and culture. 2, John's daughter, Peyton, is a colleague herself today and member of our facilities team. Calvin's wife, Leanne, and their children remain close friends of our community. I share today that this May, we will plant a tree, a beautiful, branching, tri-colored beech tree as a memorial tribute to Calvin and to John. It will be planted, and for generations to come will stand tall at the main crossroads of Valley Way, where one sits literally at the cross-section of our facilities, housekeeping, security, and capital projects operations, our residential housing, and our middle school for boys. My hope is that every time we pause at that intersection, as nearly all of us do daily, we will think with affection of John and of Calvin, be filled with their spirits, and remember how much each gave to those who live, those who learn, and those who work on this campus. We will publish a date for the tree planting once we set that date in May with John and Calvin's families. Please do plan to join us. Our community is so incredibly fortunate to have hundreds of volunteer leaders. Most notably, over 300 volunteers tend Cranbrook's gardens and maintain Cranbrook House, many of whom are among us today, just perhaps representing Eric Franchy's fan club. Can't tell you how many nominations they gave in. I believe Eric calls you his Cran fam. And we boast over 160 trustees, governors, and volunteer committee members across our program areas who volunteer their time, advice, and support as we continue to take the strategic steps to create unique educational experiences and provide ever-broadening access to art, to science, and education. I'd like to recognize all of the trustees and governors who've joined us today. Please stand. Chief among them is Chair of our Board of Trustees, Dr. Linda Gillum, who is with us. And I want to thank her for her strategic vision and leadership absolutely every day. Thank you, Linda. Regardless of one's tenure here, long or short, and whether you are a member of our visitor services team, the grounds crew, or an educator, an administrator, or a member of our volunteer leadership, each and every one of us is called to contribute to our mission of challenging minds and transforming lives in our own unique and personal way. It is the sum total of our efforts that makes Cranbrook what it is, enriching the lives of learners of all ages with unique experiences at the intersection of art, science, architecture, the natural environment, and education. No one knows this better than this year's honorees. Diverse in background, experience, affinity, identity, and wide-ranging life experiences, they are all united by passion for and dedication to Cranbrook. At a lunch we had not too long ago, they also have a good sense of humor because they said, enough of these formal portraits. We need a selfie. And Eric has to take it. So now it is time to celebrate them, this year's recipients of the President's Award for Excellence. As is customary, our honorees have each selected a friend, a colleague, or a family member to introduce them. Our first honoree's commitment and dedication to Cranbrook spans across a range of our program areas. So it is more than fitting that we're going to have two speakers who will do the introduction. So first up, I know, rocking tradition, crazy. So first up, Greg Whitcop, Director, the Center for Collections and Research, and Andrew Sataki-Blavelt, Director of the Art Museum, who will introduce the irrepressible volunteer leader, Frank Edwards.
All right, bear with me. Allergies have killed my voice this year. So, like so many relationships at Cranbrook, this one started with a party. It was the early years of my tenure as director of the Art Museum. We looked for ways to increase revenues. We landed on the idea of a summer party, the Art Museum's first ever independent fundraiser. Fortunately, I had an energetic chair of the museum committee, David Klein, who had an equally energetic friend, Frank Edwards. But before I get too far into this story, let me back up a few decades. Frank Edwards' Cranbrook origin story starts long before he raised his hand in the mid-1990s and said, "Sure, I'll be glad to help the Art Museum raise some money." We owe some of his willingness to join the ranks of our most committed volunteer leaders to his mother. While I'm embarrassed to admit that the archival trail is a little thin, Tina Edwards also served as a Cranbrook volunteer, in her case as a docent at the Art Museum. Frank and his parents were recent transplants to the area from Philadelphia, and as his mother toured visitors through the museum and pursued her own studies in art history, a very, very young Frank found himself learning all about pop art and op art as he quizzed his mother using the flashcards she created to learn about the likes of Andy Warhol and the leading contemporary artists of the day. Consciously or not, contemporary art quickly became an important part of Frank's worldview. His passions, and note the plural, intensified during his college years at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. as Frank completed his business degree in economics and entrepreneurial management, preparing to join the family elevator business, he found himself on a blind date. The young woman was none other than Ann Williams, who decades later is still seated by Frank's side. Their destination that fateful night was one of Frank's other passions, an art opening hosted by the French ambassador. Let's just say it would not be the only art opening that the two of them would attend during their lives together. Now remember those flashcards. As Frank learned more about the galleries in Philadelphia and the artists they represented, he decided he might like to become a collector. He set his sights high, hoping to buy a print by Andy Warhol. Alas, the work Frank had in mind, one of Warhol's now iconic dollar signs, was priced way out of his reach, commanding the astronomically high price of $600. So I think you can now see why it didn't take too much convincing for Frank to join the party at Cranbrook that summer in 1996. And what a party it was. Branded Serious Moonlight with very cool graphics designed by none other than Ann Williams. The event exceeded our expectations and paved the way for 15 years of art museum fundraisers and, dare I say, laid the groundwork for the center's current house parties. But what started as a leading role with a party soon evolved into much more. As Frank and Ann became seasoned collectors, yes, Frank finally acquired Warhol's iconic dollar sign, they became ardent champions of the art museum. Beyond ensuring the success of the annual fundraiser, they started to loan works to exhibitions and then, without hesitation, began to expand the depth of the art museum's permanent collection through important gifts. Frank joined David Klein on the museum committee, eventually being asked to serve as a co-chair with the likes of Jim Kelli and others, before being asked to go solo, a position he held until last year. While I will let Andrew speak about Frank's last decade at the art museum, during my own tenure, Frank never flinched as we worked to increase the breadth of the collections and expand the reach of our audiences. He was a partner at every step along the way, a person that I certainly came to rely on to not only support the museum's visions and goals, and he really is a team player, but also challenge us along the way, encouraging the museum staff to revise and refine our priorities and goals, and with an important dash of that entrepreneurial spirit, look beyond the tried and true to new ways of reaching our goals. As the Art Museum considered expanding the collecting mission, debating whether or not to accept the world-class collection of modern and contemporary art collected by Dr. John and Rose Shuey, Frank not only argued in support of the collection, but also stood up to some of the naysayers that said the DIA was the rightful heir to this collection. As a member of the museum committee, he quietly articulated the reasons why Cranbrook and its students, both at the academy and the schools, deserve to have direct access to the works in this collection. And then there was the reopening of the art museum in 2011. Frank was a rock during what was both an exhilarating and stressful time. Yes, we were in the middle of an exciting restoration of the Sarn and Design Museum and the addition of a 30,000 square foot state-of-the-art new collections wing. But we were also trying to accomplish all of this in the throes of the Great Recession. Over the course of what were often monthly dinners, he certainly kept my spirits up and focused on the future. Those of you that know Frank know that he is a bit of an anomaly in the contemporary art world. He's not the one that announces his presence with flashy clothes and a voice that booms over the crowds. He and Anne are the ones that quietly arrive at an opening with the goal of first looking closely at the work of art on display, followed then by a few warm conversations, preferably with some of the artists. Frank and Anne are the ones that want to know what you think, not simply not simply tell you what they think. So before I turn the podium over to Andrew, I would like to leave you with a final story about Frank. A year or two after we opened the restored art museum and collections wing and began to strengthen the staff, Frank proposed an intriguing idea. His initial interest in the work of Andy Warhol resulted in his acquiring a near definitive collection of the album covers designed by Warhol. To help the art museum reach beyond the walls of Cranbrook and attract a truly national audience, he wondered if we would be interested in showing his collection, knowing that even the rare Super 3 album covers that he did not own, he could secure as loans from collectors in Europe. I love the idea, but also wanted to make sure that he understood that there was an ethical issue that we would need to discuss. Certainly at that time, the museum world looked askance at institutions that showcased private collections, especially those owned by board members, without assurance that the collection would one day end up as part of the museum's permanent collection. With barely a pause, Frank said that he and Anne had already thought about this. They wanted to donate the entire collection to Cranbrook Art Museum, which they did before the exhibition even opened to the public. And that's the way Frank rolls. He's that steady and unassuming guy that always manages to steer through the turbulence around him, is always willing to listen to both sides, and somehow manages to support everyone in the room. As I moved my focus away from the art museum and accepted the challenge of launching the new Center for Collections and Research, Frank doubled his commitment to Cranbrook, remaining as chair of the museum committee while also making a noticeable difference as a member of the center committee. 28 years after he raised his hand and said he would help make Serious Moonlight a serious success, he is still here and still making a difference. And now it's time for Andrew to offer a few more accolades.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm very pleased that Frank is receiving this recognition because, as Greg mentioned, Frank has been a tremendous partner and advocate for the Art Museum for many decades, including about the last decade since I've arrived. And we did not plan this exactly, but I'm picking up on just giving you a short anecdote, trying to connect the dots. I'm working on an exhibition that tries to connect the dots between people's objects and ideas. Around the time of the mid-century for next summer, and so I've been trying to connect dots for the last few years, so bear with me with this. It's brief, though. I first encountered Frank Edwards and his wife Ann Williams indirectly, which is to say when I visited the exhibition Warhol and Vinyl, which Greg just mentioned, at the Cranbrook Art Museum in the spring of 2015. I don't know why I was here. I was not working here at the time, but I've had so many visits to Cranbrook over the years that this must have just been one of them. But I noticed they had generously donated their collection of Warhol-designed and inspired record covers to the museum on the occasion of this exhibition. Of course, this kind of generosity is the hallmark of Frank and Ann's passion for the arts and their commitment to Cranbrook. In fact, they have donated an additional 44 works to the museum over the past decade, so that's more than 200, I believe, or nearly 200. I can't quite remember why I was at Cranbrook at that moment. It was 6 months before I would arrive as director, but like any good curator, I made a mental note of who gave what art to the museum. This is kind of what you do as a professional. If you're in development, you read the donor wall, and then you take notes, or take pictures now. Who were its supporters? Always important in our world, right? When I did arrive at Cranbrook in the fall of 2015, I was generously greeted by Frank, who was the chair of the museum committee. He gave generously of his time to help me navigate the complexity of Cranbrook's governance structures and the ins and outs of the museum committee and its board of governors. Without that help, it would have taken many months, I would say years, perhaps decades, to unravel the internal governance complexities of a place like Cranbrook Educational Community. Since I share a board of governors with the Academy, the museum committee is the closest thing we have to a museum board, and its members have been very supportive and generous as the Art Museum has grown tremendously over the past 8 years. So much has changed during this time, much of it under Frank's time as chair. We have nearly tripled our audience and doubled our staff and operating budget. Importantly, we have helped lead the way in rewriting our collections management policy, which Frank gladly suffered through, reading a very long document, and guided us through our current strategic plan and reaccreditation process, and helped with the establishment, most importantly, I think, of the Art Museum's largest endowment funds for the acquisition of new works, which help us expand and diversify our collections. So without that kind of insider knowledge, this really would not have been possible, and we did it without any controversies, which is just amazing in the museum world. Anything's a controversy. And our eagerness to expand the Art Museum's reach, whether across campus down to the city of Detroit or around the world, Frank has always been a stalwart supporter. He has been there supporting our efforts in championing the institution to those both near and far, and for that, I and my team are eternally grateful. Frank's generosity is extended to his support of our efforts to reach people way beyond Southeast Michigan. One example is this gift of video recording equipment to support the documentation of all our exhibitions online through virtual 3D walkthroughs. He made this gift in 2019, I note, because it was before the pandemic would happen. And it's a prescient gift because right after that happened, suddenly art museums were employing the same technology, but we were the first to do so. And we still continue to do so people can visit. And so we're very proud of that particular initiative. And so tying it all up, speaking of the pandemic, Frank graciously loaned me his copy of Blake Gopnik's definitive biography of the artist Andy Warhol, which is 900 plus pages long. So I've had it for a few years, if you're doing the math. It's not something you can pour through in one sitting. Although I've been known to do crazy things like that. Reading it, I was reminded of my first week at Cranbrook at the Academy of Art, where I graduated from many, many, many decades ago. There I met another designer, Glenn, who regaled us with stories of working with Warhol when the artist was dabbling in the computer, and this was in the early 1980s, and on an Amiga computer, because there was no Apple computer then. And then we were grouped together in 1987, and Warhol had just died earlier that year. It would take another 30 years for someone to make a show about that last burst of creative energy from one of the 20th century's greatest artists. Sadly, it was not me who connected those dots, but the Andy Warhol Museum who got to beat us to the punch with that show. But Frank had loaned me the book to read during the pandemic, and I couldn't imagine two more different people than Andy Warhol and Frank Edwards. It's got to be the strangest of bedfellows. But sometimes art does that. It brings people together, things and ideas that you might not expect go well together. So Frank, congratulations on your well-deserved award, and I will greatly return your copy now of Andy Warhol by Blake Gopnik. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize a little bit because we didn't all coordinate everything, so there might be a little bit of repeating, but I can't edit on the fly this quickly. Thank you, Greg and Andrew. Thank you, AC. I was so relieved to learn that this was a ceremony and not a roast. As Greg mentioned, my Cranbrook story started 50 years ago. My mom was a docent at the Art Museum in the 70s, and my dad would take me to the grounds with our telescope. I guess we were trespassing, but hopefully the statute of limitations has expired. Please bear with me. I didn't have the benefit of a Cranbrook education. Webster's defines excellence as, just kidding. I don't need Webster's when I've had the pleasure of observing excellence firsthand, time and time again. The people in this room and others in the Cranbrook universe have shown me what selflessness, dedication, commitment, and generosity really mean. In 1996, my best friend David Klein asked Ann and I if we would help him with a new idea for a fundraiser to benefit the Art Museum under its relatively new director, Greg Whitcop. It sounded like fun, and I knew Ann would be a really valuable person with her expertise and connections in the graphic design community. It was a great group, and the fundraiser, which you've already heard, was named Serious Moonlight, was a great success. It was replicated several times. After a few years, David and Greg asked me if I was willing to serve on the museum committee, and I happily accepted. It was the beginning of a 20-plus year journey. Along the way, I had the chance to learn from David and his co-chair, Maxine Frankel, what excellence in committee leadership is like. A few years later, I was asked to be a co-chair of that museum committee with the legendary Jim Kelli. I did my best to step up to the challenge, and I feel like we accomplished a great deal. With that promotion, I was added to the CAA Board of Governors, which I'm still a member of today, serving with great volunteers like Denise Anton David, Antoine Dubaclard, and too many others to name. Along the way, Greg was presented with that opportunity to leverage his passion and knowledge of Cranbrook, creating the Center for Collections and Research. I've always been a Greg Whitcop man, so I was honored to help out in the initial funding and creation of a committee to help support this new venture, a committee I still serve on today, under the exemplary leadership of Beth Willoughby. She is amazing. As the center grew, the demands of running the art museum and the center became too much for one person, and a new museum director, Andrew Blauvelt, joined us. I had a decision to make. I had already been involved with the museum for nearly 20 years, and the transition would have made a logical exit point. But I thought about how daunting a task it would be for Andrew to take over without as much counsel and institutional history as possible. So I decided to stay on and do everything I could to make Andrew as successful as he could be. I couldn't be more proud of all we accomplished at the museum over the years, and the transition to a new committee chair was a smooth and seamless process. Mark Schwartz is the right man for the new challenges facing the museum going forward, and he and Andrew have my complete support. Excellence. Without David Klein and his leadership, I wouldn't be here today. Greg Whitcop has turned the Center for Collections and Research into a powerhouse with an incredible future. Kevin Atkinson and the rest of the crew. Andrew Blauvelt has blown me away with his brilliance and his ability to shift priorities for the museum to make it truly a bridge to connect Cranbrook with Detroit and really the entire world. Laura Mott is the best curator in the country. She has done so much in her time here, it should probably be her up here instead of me. Bob Wilson, Sandy Smith, who have been up here, serve as an inspiration to me and everyone here at Cranbrook. AC's leadership during incredibly trying times should never go unappreciated. The last several years, I've had the honor and pleasure to work alongside Jennifer Gilbert. Her commitment to excellence, equity, and to ensure the best possible future for the Academy and the museum has been a partnership I will never forget. And finally, the most important example of excellence in my lifetime, my wife, Ann Williams. She is a talented artist, fantastic gardener, and the best wife and mother anyone could ever dream of. If you had any doubts, ask our Labradoodle Cooper, who is likely crying right now that she's not with him. Me? Thanks also to my sons, Connor and Devin, for being so supportive and putting up with my Cranbrook obsession for their entire lives. Connor graduated from the upper school and managed the CK hockey team all 4 years, and Devin was the one who came up with the Artreach name for the museum and worked to provide underserved kids with art kits during the pandemic. It has always been my hope that the people I interact with feel better about themselves and our mission after our time together. Thanks again to everyone who's been a part of this journey. And as my dear friend Greg pointed out to me, this is just the beginning.
Congratulations again to Frank. Judy Lindstrom, former chair of the House and Gardens Auxiliary Board and co-chair of the Gardens Operations Committee, will now introduce the utterly delightful Eric Franchy.
Hi, everyone. My congratulations to all of this year's well-deserved recipients, and my sincere thanks to Lillian Botter for creating the President's Award for Excellence, celebrating the very best in the Cranbrook community. It is indeed my honor to bestow upon all of you the many attributes Eric Franchy possesses, and how his 12 years as part of the Cranbrook family have resulted in creating a marketing and PR roadmap that literally introduced Cranbrook to thousands of people and re-engaged people who visited once but put it on the shelf as, I've already been there. He also invigorated the House and Gardens Auxiliary membership by suggesting more potential for volunteer growth. As with any speech I make, I depend on one word to navigate what I'm going to say. And for Eric, that word is impression. I did have to look it up just to get the thing. And the dictionary explains it this way. Impression, an idea, feeling, or opinion about something or someone, especially one formed without conscious thought or on the basis of little evidence. My first impression when Eric arrived for his interview was that I was staring at a doppelganger, namely the actor Tobey Maguire. Once I realized that there was no telltale signs of a Spider-Man crashing through the window, I formed my next impression during the interview process when Eric, and actually our other candidate we were considering, made a rookie mistake. That's right, you made a rookie mistake. Both forgot their portfolios showing examples of their marketing and PR work. However, within an hour after his interview, breaking, I'm convinced, all speed limits, Eric returned with portfolio in hand, and I had the impression that this was a man who really wanted this job because he cared enough to make the effort to prove his many talents. However, the aha moment for me and the impression that stands out was when he was thrown into the volunteer world with no parachute. Imagine at that time, 300 plus people of all ages and backgrounds, personalities that run the gamut from A to Z, and trust me, can change in the blink of an eye, and are volunteering for a multitude of reasons. Remember, we don't have to be here, we want to be here. From the start, he listened, he observed, he asked questions, he made suggestions, but not orders or demands. He assessed, and perhaps most important, he respected all of us. And my impression was that we were lucky to have Eric as an employee. Impressions are also a tool to find out more about a person. So please indulge me as I share a few things that you might not know about Eric. That's right. His favorite stuffed animal was a gorilla named Coco. His ideal vacation spots would be Banff or Fiji. His favorite color, as you can attest today, is blue. This one is for, where's Michael Stafford? Somewhere in here I saw him. There we go. This one's for you, Michael. He would love to come back as a T-Rex or a pterodactyl, which confounds me because he told me that he's really scared of falling from heights. So perhaps when he becomes a pterodactyl, that will stop. In no particular order, he loves pizza with cheese, Dodge Vipers, playing his guitar, hockey, and the Red Wings. His favorite teachers were Mrs. Larson, his first grade teacher, because all of his siblings had her as a teacher, and Mrs. Britt, his sixth grade teacher, because, well, he was in sixth grade and she was, did I kind of mention that he was in sixth grade? So, put two together. Anyway, his heroes are Superman, though I'm sure Toby would be upset, Mike Ilitch, and of course his father. In a pinch, he will dress up as one of Santa's elves. And And in his next life, he would like to be a lead singer in a band or a photographer. Finally, the lasting impression that the members of the auxiliary and his associates at Cranbrook would agree upon is that Eric is a kind, talented, accommodating, funny, resourceful, and a caring person who we are so privileged to know, and I'm privileged to call my friend.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, AC, for this honor, and thank you, Judy, for that incredible introduction. About 12 years ago, I lucked my way into the opportunity of a lifetime. Growing up, my dream job was actually to be a Zamboni driver, and while that's one hat they've yet to let me wear here, working at Cranbrook has really become my dream. As Judy and you may have seen in my program, or in the programs, I started about 12 years ago as a summer public relations intern. I didn't know much about Cranbrook before then, but from that first day and that first summer, I knew this is where I wanted to spend my career. While my role has transformed just a tad since then, some days I still feel like an intern. And not just because I still have struggles with a printer or play on social media all the time. I'm still discovering cool new spots on campus, meeting interesting people from Mark Wahlberg to St. Nicholas, and learning something new all the time. While reflecting on what else I might say tonight, I decided to turn to someone far wiser than me. Cranbrook founder George Booth, and also VJ Iyer, but he said not to mention his name. There are two quotes from Mr. Booth that I'd like to share with you. The first is work in your play and play in your work. And by now you can probably tell that I do at least one of those things. Most of you are probably familiar with this next quote. The only way to have is to give, the only way to keep is to share, and the only thing worth finding is opportunity. The only way to have is to give, so today I want to make sure I give time to thank all the people who have impacted my career. First and foremost, to Judy Lindstrom and Helen Mayman for seeing something in me, and not just Toby Maguire, even though I didn't go to Cranbrook or have a background in art or history or know anything about gardening, and still often identify plants by their color. I'm also grateful to Judy for asking me to come back after the internship ended, even if she did technically let me go for 3 weeks before making that call. Thank you to Colleen Smith, the first person from Cranbrook House and Gardens Auxiliary that I met. It was on a beautiful spring day, much like today, and she walked me down from Cranbrook House to the auxiliary office for my interview. Before showing me into the office, Colleen wished me good luck, and it must have worked. Colleen, thank you for always being a pleasure to work with in the office, telling me that I didn't need to wear ties to work, and being my original Cran mom. I owe a great deal of gratitude to Mr. Dick Lilly, who somehow found the funds and convinced the board to make me full-time. And whether we were taking a time-lapse video of the gardens or building out the Cranbrook app, Dick always ensured I had the right tools to perform successfully. Of course, I can't go too far without thanking Randy Forrester, who often calls us partners in crime or Batman and Robin. Randy manages events like the Steinway piano recitals and the Santa sighting, and even on a beach in Mexico, we'll be thinking of ways to fundraise for Cranbrook. While I'd prefer to be Batman and Superman, or I guess I should go with Spider-Man, I'm happy to be the Robin to your Batman any day. Thank you to Dom DeMarco for giving me the chance to explore and share more of Cranbrook beyond the 40-acre gardens. I never dreamed I'd be getting paid to take photos of plants or Santa Claus, let alone the occasional dinosaur, but now I can't imagine doing anything else. Thank you to Eileen Savage for being a mentor, friend, and even a bit of a therapist, especially during the pandemic. And thank you to Elise Comer, from kind of our unsung hero in the office, from taking on those only at Cranbrook projects like helping water the piano or photograph soil. She's always there to support, but most importantly, thank you for talking me out of giving this speech in my elf suit. Thank you to Paul Nelson for all the laughs and the amazing views of the sunken garden that I get to enjoy while brainstorming out my window every summer. And thank you to Ellen Doherty, Joyce Harding, Catherine Turnbull, all my colleagues in the Communications Office, Advancement Office, President's Office, Center for Collections and Research, and the Events Department. And last but certainly not least, thank you to my family, from teaching me about devotion to their willingness to dress up as mascots during outdoor Santa experiences. They're always there to support, and they mean the world to me. The only way to have is to give, and the only way to keep is to share. The work I do in recognition like this wouldn't be possible without all of our volunteers who work tirelessly in the gardens, leading tours, running events, and so much more. Thank you for your unwavering dedication. You've always made Cranbrook feel like home and inspire me every day. I'm proud to share this achievement with all of you. The only way to have is to give, the only way to keep is to share, and the only thing worth finding is opportunity. So thank you to Cranbrook for giving me the opportunity to work for my passions and let my passions work for me. And for giving me an audience of about 150 people to tell that our spring plant sale is coming up on May 17th and 18th. I hope to see you all there. So in closing, thank you again, AC, for this honor. Thank you to the President's Award for Excellence team for planning this special event, and thank you to all of you for making this celebration and this organization so special. Please keep liking and sharing this magical place. Thank you.
Congratulations, Eric. And now, Nancy Swords, Deputy Director and Head of Visitor Experiences at our Institute of Science, will introduce the very passionate Heather Groeger.
Oh, I knew I'd need a booster seat for this. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations to all the recipients. I would be remiss, God, I love that term, to not acknowledge the work that it takes to get up to this podium. Having had the honor of attending many President's Award gatherings, I've enjoyed listening to the thoughtful introductions and acceptances about talent, people, and connections across the campus, our drive to innovate, our desire to engage, our collaborative efforts. Heather Groeger epitomizes One Cranbrook. Heather didn't know any of us when she accepted a visitor services position 13 years ago. It was a job posting that brought her to the campus. It was the first walk and talk around the museum that sold me on her skill set. And now, more than a decade later, I'm certain it's the other duties as assigned that keeps her here, or tethered here, and is so integral to our work. And of course, the colleagues and friends she's collected along the way. Heather uses the metaphor that her life is a circus. I truly believe Cranbrook benefits from being one of the acts under her big top. On behalf of CIS, I'll brag a bit about Heather's abilities. She's tenacious when it comes to creating data scripts. Writing code is her taming of the tigers. She loves to solve problems. That skill is her trapeze act, for which I'm grateful because I'm sure I create most of them. And she's excellent at collaborating, truly the work that moves our One Cranbrook needle. Gosh, thanks, Emily from IT. A perfect example of Heather's cooperative style and analytical skills. Teachers greatly appreciate the time Heather takes to work through the details of a field trip and her effort to respond to every question. Then afterwards, there's the behind-the-scenes work to reconcile admissions, programs, and attendance. She's her own circus's booking agent. Oh yes, Tricia. Gosh, thanks, Tricia from accounting. A notable, this is more ridiculous than I thought it was. A notable example of how Heather views every opportunity to engage as an opportunity for exemplary service to others. Heather jumps at the chance to support others' work. She is truly a juggler of time and always finds room in her day to squeeze in one more task. Well, thanks, Danielle from CIS. I'm cracking myself up here. The two of you are the most efficient aerialists I know. And when I'm in the role of ringmaster, here's my favorite. Heather's plate spinning act. With no less than a dozen projects moving around at any given time, she is forever focused on never letting a single one drop. That kind of engagement is what I'll call the greatest show on earth, and only at Cranbrook. I'm going to go with old tradition here. President Roche, it is my absolute pleasure to present to you Heather Groeger, recipient of this year's President's Award for Excellence and masterful CIS team performer.
Wow, how do I follow that? I had no idea. I knew the Institute was the right fit for me when I walked into the job interview 13 years ago, and behind the interview panel, it was a panel interview, surprise, there was a 15-foot Archelon kind of looming over the interview space. For those of you who don't know what an Archelon is, it's like a giant prehistoric turtle. So there I am, sitting under the turtle, getting interviewed by these 5 people about why I want to work at the Institute. And one of the visitor services supervisors at the time, Joey, asks me, if you were going to be a bowl of cereal, what kind would you be and why? I paused for a second and then I said, well, I think I'd be shredded wheat because like the cereal, I've been around forever and most people like me. That day told me that Cranbrook was a place where I would be challenged in a good way and have fun. I'm also lucky enough to truly consider my coworkers as friends. I have the luxury of knowing that I have a team of fabulous folks working with me, and no matter what issues may arise, as a team, they will be overcome. This atmosphere is a direct result of leadership modeling. Dr. Stafford truly fosters an environment of innovation and collaboration, and Nancy Swords has been a great mentor, guiding me in the ins and outs of all things education and customer service, and they've both instilled in me the problem-solving and customer-driven focus to make every child and adult experience at the Institute truly memorable. Beyond the Institute, I also really value the collaboration of the folks across the beautiful community, some of which stood up just a while ago. I've been lucky enough to spend a significant amount of time with folks from the Art Museum, the finance team, gift processing, HR, development, the events team, advancement, SSP, the school's business office, and IT when the computers revert back to prehistoric rocks. They're all ready to help whenever needed. Cranbrook is also truly a part of mine and my family's lives. My children, up here in the front, have all grown up here. They consider Aunt Nancy a member of our extended family. I started working at CIS 3 months before my daughter was born. Peyton has spent many days coloring at the spare table in my office and exploring exhibits, then graduated to summer camp and now volunteers at summer camp. My boys, Matthias and Jude, have also been regulars at summer camps all across campus, and of course the whole family loves to attend the yearly employee picnic, Halloween science, and coming to see each new exhibit. I feel blessed that my kids think I have the coolest job ever. Lastly, I'd like to thank my spouse for her support. When I first told her I had an interview at CIS, she said to me that it was a perfect fit, as over the last 20 plus years together, I've dragged her to a lot of museums. I feel so honored by this opportunity, and thank you all. Cranbrook is not just a job to me, it's an opportunity to create wonder and magic for all visitors as they learn to appreciate history, art, and science.
Congratulations, Heather. And Carla Young, Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access, will present her daughter, the compassionate and truly beloved Kelli Jackson.
Well, good afternoon. I hate to inform you that I am the straight man of the couple of Michael and Carla Young. So humor will not be on the menu, but I hope you bear with me. I want to thank ECC, Brookside staff and community, the CEC, and AC for appreciating this genius of a humble person. The Maasai, an indigenous ethnic group of nomadic warriors in Africa, have a unique and meaningful way of greeting one another. Instead of asking the typical, "How are you?" or "What's up?" they inquire about the well-being of the next generation. Their traditional greeting is Kasarian and Gary, a phrase which translates to, "And how are the children?" It reflects the Maasai's deep concern for the welfare and prosperity of their offspring. In their culture, children hold immense value, and their well-being is shared responsibility. So the mom in me needs to celebrate this person in her spirit of Sankofa, which is go back and get it. You have to know the past to be in the present in order to build the future. Kelli Taylor Jackson, absolutely a name which nods to her designation as the #1 Swiftie, was introduced to this community as a child of 3 or 4 years old, the very age of the youngest children she serves today. During those years, our family frequented the cultural centers of the region every summer. When Kelli was about 7, on a family trip to CIS, visiting an exhibit where she was really enthralled by the polar bear, Kelli was actually captured in a photo that was published in the Detroit News with a caption article that read and identified her as a girl working on the floor of the gallery exhibit, drawing a picture of a polar bear and writing a story about a cub who had lost his mother. I don't know if you remember that. That is it. That's Kelli, creating and understanding the world through art. Let's think about the village that raised her. Kelli is such a principled person. Her manifestation of the fruitage, I can say this, of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, mildness, and self-control show up in her care of our campus community and our children. Kelli's key, or capacity to do with passion, with absolute devotion, love, and passion of soul, grew from her artist journey. She was a frequent attendee of the CAA art camp under Chris Snyder. She studied AP art, studio art at Lasser High School under Ms. Pasternak. And her achievements in her development as an artist include rising to concertmaster in the orchestra her senior year, a finalist for the top awards in both violin performance and arts portfolio, to the selection of her work from her undergrad master's thesis at OU that hung in the state capitol for a year. The discipline she displays as an artist positioned her well to be guided and mentored in service in this community where she grew up. She began her journey as a part of our workforce here in SSP, as a counselor and an art instructor. She worked in our fore and after care for summer and special programs. And in those opportunities, she learned from a young age how to take care of and nurture the children at work and play. Her talent, then recognized by the late and much missed Calvin Vincent, who mentored her in her current role working in security and safety at Brookside. Kelli's light grows over time and shows up in each moment as she brings this safety and security to us. The imprint of growing up on this campus is clear on all of our artist children. The interior world of an artist is so heartily nurtured by the CEC, as we've just witnessed in all of the stories from the awardees tonight, or this afternoon. The CEC offers a powerful invitation, and as Maria Popova writes, an incantation to create, to make as an answer to the times we live in. Art, science, education, forming a timeless ode to life's tenacity, to the relationship between vulnerability and strength, and to the power of our collective work to wrest from the smallness of a single life, a single day, a single moment, essential bigness of being. This quotation makes me think of childhood and the work of protecting its bigness of being, which Kelli shares with us every day. Each moment, each voice needs the attention and the hearing of a person like Kelli. If you have or have had a child at Brookside in the years that she's worked there, or if you have engaged her off the books pet care services, you have been up close and personal with the Kelli effect. Although I've known these gifts since her birth, it was when our upper school seniors started to submit images of Officer Jackson in their scavenger hunt photo assignment stories that I would assign in my classes, where they were asked to find a community member who significantly impacted their growth and learning. These images of Kelli started showing up. And when she began getting invitations to the open houses of graduating seniors in celebration of their matriculation to college, this is the Kelli effect. And when my introduction in working with parent groups and the service of my office needed to begin with the introduction, I'm Officer Jackson's mother, in order to bring that sense of safety and knowing into the space. Yeah, it was then that I knew that she was making this kind of difference here. Safety and security of a learning community isn't about physical barriers and highly controlled spaces. As D.H. Lawrence put it in poetry, it is, in talking about his poetry, it is all a question of sensitivities. Brute force and overbearing may make a terrific effect in the world, but in the end, that which lives by delicate sensitivities, that is where it's at. If it were a question of brute force, not a single human baby would survive for a fortnight. It is the grass of the field, most frail of all things, that supports all life all the time. But for the grass, the green grass, no empire would rise, no man could eat bread, for grain is grass. And Hercules or Napoleon or Henry Ford would alike be denied existence, but for a grain of grass. And so, Kelli, Taylor, Swifty, Jackson, The next time someone asks Kassarian and Gary, and how are the children? Because of you and the fruitage of your spirit, we are able to offer the appropriate response. All of the children are well. They are peaceful and safe. Thank you for working so excellently in our community.
How do I follow that? That was brilliant. Thank you, Mom. So, when choosing someone to introduce me, it was a little challenging because there are many people I deeply care about that really helped me become the person I am today. But in the end, I realized it could only be my mom, Carla Young. She is someone who I feel the world listens to when she speaks. The exception to that may have been me and my siblings when we were younger, but even then we knew she was special. When asked, I often describe myself as a cat-obsessed music enthusiast with a tendency to draw sad things. But my mom's intro proves that she has always known me better than myself. 19 years ago, my mom, 19 years ago, you knew yourself well enough to know that you were ready to love Michael as a partner, and you knew me and my siblings, Chris, Candace, and Mara, enough to know that we were ready to love Michael as a father. When Michael appeared, we knew he was the gift for all of us. Michael, who had no children, wanted to marry my mom, who at the time had 4 preteen adolescent children. And the older I get, the more I realize how insane he was. But Michael continues to teach me the definition of unconditional love. I truly believe that Mom teaching us about our God, Jehovah, and his unconditional love prepared us to welcome Michael in with open arms. Jehovah's love is the greatest gift that I have ever received, and my love for him and his son has taught me to strive to be the best version of myself that I can be. Over the past few weeks, I thoroughly enjoyed learning more about my fellow recipients, Heather, Eric, and Frank, and their passionate contributions to Cranbrook. And thank you to everyone who had a part in coordinating this event this evening. I want to thank AC for choosing us as this year's recipients out of a community filled with deserving employees. It's an honor that I'm still trying to and forever will try to comprehend. Whenever I attempt to self-reflect, my insecurities instinctively take over, so I avoid it, even though I know it's crucial for personal growth. And the process of receiving this award, however, has forced me to closely examine this current version of myself that was nominated by a team of 3 important people in my life who continue to help me grow. I was nominated by Beth Kennedy, a person who embodies light. Myself and countless others are mourning this end to her teaching career this year. But the excitement I feel in seeing your next chapter in retirement unfold, both literally and figuratively, subdues my sadness. She is irreplaceable in the sense of the word. I was nominated by Maureen Williams. Maureen, one of the kindest, most thoughtful, selfless, and loving people I know, is now entering motherhood. And the priceless lessons she teaches children and her luminous aura will seamlessly flow into baby Williams. He is already set up for greatness. I was lastly nominated by Jill Santos, someone who I believe has no idea how truly impactful and resilient she is. I see how much influence she has on the children, from where I sit every single day in front of ECC. And her creative spirit is infectious and stunning. The children aren't the only ones learning from the three of you, I am too. And I could speak endlessly about so many people at Brookside who I've grown close to over the years, but we'd literally be here all night. I know none of you want that. I want you to know that I love all of you. One of my worst fears is for a parent, peer, or faculty member to believe that I don't understand the full responsibility of the position I hold as a school officer. And I consider the weight of it in my mind every day in the hopes that I can lessen that load for others. So please understand that when I show up in my uniform, I'm choosing to show up for whatever happens. And this is what I believe is a universal truth in our department. I'm fully aware that I would not be standing up here if not for my fellow officers. Our department is small enough that it is glaringly obvious whenever we have a weak link in our chain. While the journey has not been perfect, the dedication and care that Amela, Lauren, and Chris have put into building it has paid off. Their perseverance through tremendous difficulty this year has shown this community how invaluable they are. This current department that Calvin and Chris have built over the years is the strongest we've ever had. I'm proud to work with such loyal and dedicated people. After the passing of our dear friend Calvin Vincent, I didn't know if I would be able to continue working here. I'm sharing this now because his memory has moved me to stay. The safety measures Calvin instilled, the programs he introduced, the resilient and passionate person that he was, will live on with those fortunate enough to have known him. When Calvin first announced to our department that he would be transitioning into a role of Director of Operations and that Christopher Furlong would be our new Director of Security, I could not form a coherent thought. But my instinct, gut feeling was that this was a move that would better our community. And Chris continues to better our community. I fully believe one of the best things we can do to honor Calvin is to appreciate how much our community grew under his care and how much it continues to grow now. I apologize. In this role and as a person, I have bettered myself because of him. Thank you again for recognizing me for this award. After some self-reflection, I'm able to appreciate fully how privileged I am to be in company with all of you. Thank you.
Let us thank all of the honorees for their remarkable words and their inspiration. Congratulations again, Kelly, Heather, Eric, Frank. As well, let us thank our presenters, Greg, Andrew, Nancy, Carla, Judy. Thank you. And we want to thank those responsible for making today happen: Erica Stefani, Marianne Tuzeski, and Molly McGrath. Thank you. As well as our facilities, capital projects, housekeeping staffs, and of course, our colleagues at Chartwells. As we begin today to remind ourselves why Dr. Lillian Botter established this award, to celebrate the commitment and dedication to excellence that each of our honorees brings to our community, let us be inspired. I want to share a quote from founding family member Henry Booth from 1918. We may attain to a great reputation in finance and commerce, but the enduring proofs of achievement are the standards of beauty we set up for ourselves in thought, word, and deed, and the tangible evidences of our devotion to these ideals by the creation of surroundings consistent with such. The thoughts, words, and deeds of our honorees are achievements of true beauty and are tangible evidence of Cranbrook's mission and promise to challenge, transform, each and every day. Kelli's daily devotion to creating a safe place to learn and grow for the youngest members of our community and everyone she touches in the course of a day. Knowing how her own experiences living and working on campus have shaped her story as a person, a leader, an artist. Heather's steadfast commitment to excellence as she greets everyone in the course of her day, in every role that she has held at the Institute since 2011, with a goal of building meaningful relationships and cherished memories for our visitors and each other, which in turn make all of us true stakeholders. Eric's envisioning and helping to implement so many ways of welcoming that this community can offer. One in particular, free admission to the Cranbrook Gardens, as more than just a beautiful place to visit, but a true refuge for all of us at any time of need, a place of calm, especially when we need it most. And Frank, with an unrelenting passion for advancing the arts, history, and architecture of Cranbrook, helping us maintain, and more important, helping us to grow as an institution and in our reputation, whether that's local, national, or anywhere around the globe. Frank, Eric, Heather, Kelli, with your colleagues and friends, I marvel at how your devotion to Cranbrook's ideals has helped us grow and transform as a place. That is what we mean when we talk about excellence. Guests and friends, thank you for celebrating these 4 individuals and all that they give, and thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping reminders. Recipients should take the beautiful floral arrangements home. And please, everyone, as you entered, there are mats for photographs. We ask you to please sign. These will embrace a formal photo from today that each recipient will take away as a gift. And so they become very, very meaningful. Sign the mats. Again, congratulations to Frank, Eric, Heather, and Kelli. Thank you for inspiring us in so many ways. Please do linger and enjoy one another's company. And thank you for making this day so special.